To demonstrate some new features I've been working on, I'll be repackaging a shell program with the upcoming 0.6 release of resholve. Resholve is a command line tool that helps you find and resolve external dependencies in shell scripts. The main reason you'd want to do this is to make shell easier to package or deploy. But the need for another tool may not be evident if you don't spend much time dealing with shell. The flexibility that makes shell a good glue language also makes it tricky to package. Without a build process to gripe at you, it's even hard to know whether you have identified all of the external dependencies of a complex shell program, especially one that sources a lot of other files and uses a lot of functions. Even if a dependency is installed, the user's path may not include the right directories, or they may be in the wrong order, or the script's author may have hard-coded absolute paths that aren't right for your OS or package manager. I'm building resholve to improve shell packaging in the Nix ecosystem, so we'll look at it in that context, but I develop it as a general tool that likely has uses outside of Nix. Let's see what happens when I try to use the nixpkg for yadm, a dot file manager written in shell, with a nearly empty path. If you aren't familiar with Nix, this enters a shell with a path that only includes yadm and Nix's set of standard build tools. This basic invocation fails because yadm expects to find git via the path, and I didn't add git's package into this shell. Here on the right is the source for this Nix package. I've lightly modified it for the demo, and you can see those changes in the diff to the left. The selected line shows that git is in the package's build inputs, but build inputs don't get pulled into the path with the package. Only the package itself gets added to the path. This is fine for users whose path already contains a compatible version of git, but as with shell scripts and programs everywhere, yadm's Nix package would be happy to misfire if you, or a script, or a daemon used it with the wrong environment. The Nix ecosystem already has a few ways to address this kind of problem, including patching, shell wrappers, and the propagated user env packages attribute. Each has its own problems, but they share a fatal flaw. All of them require you to know the script's dependencies. Resholve's goal is to spot the most common issues here, give you a toolkit for triaging them, and exit with an error until you do. Before we start, I'll fold up some parts of this expression that I won't be touching, and enable a simple test that will surface the way the package is already broken. Now I'll walk through the process of converting this package to use resholve's Nix API. Resholve package uses this solutions attribute set to invoke resholve. Most packages, including this one, just need one solution, but some have multiple scripts that need conflicting rules. Each solution includes one or more scripts. Script paths are relative to the output directory. Resholve will also make us explicitly state the interpreter. So let's go double check what yadm uses. Yadm's using binsh, so I'll use sh from bash. Resholve also wants a list of inputs. These are the packages Resholve will resolve external commands from. I'll go ahead and start us off from scratch here, except for get, since we already know that's a dependency. Oh, and we'll go ahead and add bash. Resholve package lets us know how it's running Resholve in case we need to manually debug anything. And Resholve is complaining here because the script invokes whatever is in the variable yadm command. Since this command may be dynamic, Resholve makes us triage. Let's go take a look at how yadm uses this variable. The comment above the variable definition tells us this is for internal commands. And the comment seems to be backed up by the fact that it's set from the value of parameter 1 and that we're in the main function. Since the value most likely comes from the user at runtime, the best way to triage this invocation is to keep it. Resholve has a keep directive for this purpose. You can read more about keep directives in the man page, but this specific use is how we tell Resholve to keep a variable that's invoked as a command. This is the same error, though something named awk program is most likely an external command. Let's see how it's used. One of the new features is a way to fix these variables used as commands. Since this script is probably using all of these as commands, I'm going to go ahead and set up fixed directories for all of them at once to save a little time. We only need one of these. As with keep directives, you can read more about fixed directives in the man page. And as of this writing, 2 of these don't have a nixpkg, so I'll go ahead and just comment them out and document this. Since there's no package to resolve these 2 from, I guess I should go ahead and add them, add keep directives for them. Oops. I still need to take a few steps to finish this out, but first let's take a look at what the fixed directives will actually do. So this first instance of awk program is the invocation itself. And these next 2 are in a function named setAwk that will set awk program to the first value in the initial array that it can find. The fixed directive I added will tell resholve to replace this parameter expansion. It'll replace the entire expansion, and it'll do this before it resolves commands. Any places that it does happen to get used as a command will then be able to resolve to absolute paths as normal. Any other expansions, like this specific one selected here, will just end up holding the value that we supply. Since these get resolved, since all of these commands will get resolved, I also need to go ahead and go add them to the inputs. And I'm also going to need to add them up top. We got that one. Template command smells like something that's internal. I'll probably need to keep it, but let's go ahead and confirm. I'm just kind of checking what functions it's used in and trying to glean some sense of what it's for. This is probably significant since it's mentioning a few of the externals that we just saw variables for. So I guess at least a few of these are template processors that the either the program or the user may choose. Okay. Yeah, it definitely seems to be that kind of dynamic behavior. Since I've already added all but one of those template processors to the inputs, I think we're going to go ahead and just keep this and hope that it's going to work in most of the cases, and realize that that there's some possibility that for anybody who's using this one template processor we weren't able to add, that it might not work in their case. Guess I should be documenting as I go. This one's a little tricky. We're going to need to see how it's using this. It looks like it's using this for entering a special subshell mode. It requires the shell to be set at the end of the script. It seems to support at least bash, csh, zsh. Since the sounds very much like interactive behavior, I'm just going to keep it for now and hope that users will notice if it's behaving like they expect or not. Once again, hook command sounds very much like an implementation detail. Since yadm is Git-based, I'm going to guess that these are yadm's equivalent of Git hooks, in which case this is going to be one more thing that we just end up keeping. yadm bootstrap also sounds like an implementation detail, but note that the error here is actually a little bit different. The variable is an argument to the exec built-in. The comment clarifies that these are relative internal internal paths of some sort. I'll keep it, but I'll need to specify that it's in the scope of an exec. The error we're seeing here is part of another new feature. The update will add support for recursive resolution. This was easy enough for built-ins, but an extra tricky part of packaging shell is that any given external command might be able to execute other external commands. Sudo and xargs are the most familiar examples of this, but they are far from the only ones. For example, at least the GNU sed and awk both have this behavior. Resholve now requires some metadata for each external command it finds. It outsources the job of generating the metadata. It's just passed in a format that I call lore. The most important kind of lore tells Resholve whether a command can, cannot, or might be able to execute its arguments. Resholve's Nix API automatically supplies lore for every package that you pass in the inputs. It uses binlore, a reference lore provider that I've written, to do this. Binlore isn't doing any kind of advanced binary analysis. It's using some Yara rules to sniff for signs that an executable just uses any exec API. If Resholve encounters a command that is marked as can or might, Resholve will try to fall back on some internal command-specific parsing rules that it can use to find exec arguments. If Resholve doesn't have parsing rules for the command, it'll throw the error that we see here. It'll take a little time, and I'll probably need some help to refine these features in both binlore and Resholve, but they've proven to be a good starting point so far. For this demo, I'm just going to triage the invocations of potential execers and then add overrides if they look safe. In the real world, it would be great to be improving the rules that are in binlore and be improving the list of matchers parsing rules that are in resholve itself. That definitely doesn't smell like subexec, so I'm going to add an override for this. Lore is generally passed as a whole directory of files, but we can pass the overrides through the Nix API or from a command line as just kind of a simple list. Did I not save it? Oh, gosh. Sorry. Would help if I named that right. Once again, this doesn't smell like any kind of subexec, so I'm going to ignore that as well. This one's probably going to take a little bit more work to review. Since there are probably a lot of these, I'm going to try not to take too much time to review each one. I'm just looking for anything that smells like a command I recognize. I'm going to go ahead and add that one as well. Don't see anything obvious there either. Here's a new one. Even though all of the externals we've seen thus far have been coming from variables, here's just a bare reference to bash inside an exec. I'll need to add this specifically to the inputs. It should have already been in the head, right? Yep. Okay. Okay, and you can see this is failing at the same line, but of course, we'll probably need to add an override for bash since it's just execing bag just execing bash with the existing script and whatever arguments the user called it with. I don't think we have to look for any sub-exec behavior that would be in the script's control, at least. Okay. Go ahead and add core utils. Nope. Okay. Add tar. Okay. I will not be the first person to claim to recognize all of my tar flags, but neither one of those looks dangerous. Go ahead and add an exemption for this one as well. Oh, that's interesting. I guess yadm is compatible with Cygwin. Resolve has a concept of a fake directive. It's a way to tell it to pretend something's defined when there's a pretty good reason it's missing. For example, if a shell library expects another script that sources it to define some callbacks or hook functions that the library can call, this is how we would tell it that when it's processing the library, not to expect to find definitions for those functions. So we'll just use that here, I think. Although I do want to only fake sigpath when we are not using Cygwin, I guess. Okay. Looks like we've got it working. I'm going to go ahead and copy the result of this into my checkout of yadm so that we can see what it did. And I'm just gonna kind of scroll through the diff and comment on anything I see that looks interesting. You can see here at the beginning that it's replaced the shebang. You can see that it's replaced bash within this exec. You can see that it correctly replaced and then resolved the awk program variable with awk. It resolved this dir name inside a command substitution. It looks like there are a lot more core utils than we saw in first pass. Resolved this git inside a command sub and replaced it and then resolved it. Okay. Notice that since these aren't commands, they got substituted but not resolved. So they're getting passed to this enter function, but these both smell a lot like they probably run get crypt and transcript, so this might be a mistake. Let's double check this in the full source real quick. Okay, so this function is our friend with the that's running us in whatever shell is set to. So this is that same dynamic. We're going to give you a shell with some pre-set up variables. So it sounds like something that's very, very interactive. So I think maybe I should back off of actually trying to deal with get crypt and transcript in here. And I guess I'll just leave a comment to document what I've discovered here. Okay. Repeat. Hopefully we can finish skimming the diff, but I'll just try to jump back to roughly where we were. Note again, since awk program isn't invoked as a command here, it doesn't get resolved. Resolve replaces these before the normal resolution to make it more likely that the substitution is going to be acceptable if the script is also using the variable for anything other than just invoking. Because we've replaced and resolved all of the actual uses of the awk program parameter expansion, we shouldn't need to worry about the fact that this function could technically, under the right conditions, set awk program to a new value. We can go ahead and verify that in just a second. I'll go ahead and finish reviewing the script, and then we'll go check the full text for awk program just to kind of prove that it's not that's not in use anywhere. Here at the end, you can see that resolve replaces or appends all of the directives. This includes the directives we've directly supplied, but it also includes directives that describe everything it is correctly found and resolved inside the script. It's basically doing this to preserve the resolution state so that if it sees this script again as something that should be sourced in another script, it can go ahead and process this script and understand that any functions that it's got should be treated as in scope for the sourcing script, but then also not need to nag you about anything that isn't resolved in this script or anything that isn't ignored in it. So let's go ahead and confirm that awk program isn't being used in a expansion anywhere anymore. Yeah. So there are just those two uses of it. Finally, let's make sure that the little test we made passes. Okay. It's not perfect, but it's a big improvement. Thanks for watching.